Today, I am delighted to welcome Marcus Glowasz to the show. Marcus is a project leadership coach and advisor, helping project leaders, teams to future-proof their ways of delivering and managing projects, drive change in today's fast-paced, high-growth and rapidly changing global environments, and become effective leaders and role models in their practice. With almost 3 decades of international experience in technology-driven projects, working with numerous organizations from large corporations to small business practices across various industries, he has developed an obsession and a passion for innovation and advancement of the project management practice. His expertise is in driving required behavioural and cultural changes to improve project resilience and robustness, adopt a continuous improvement mindset, and transition to a future-proof and evidence-driven project management practice. He has an executive MBA from Henley Business School in the UK, professional certificate in executive coaching from Henley Business School, PMI, ACMP, PMP, PGMP, Prince Certified, Managing Successful Programs Certified Practitioner, and a Certified Practitioner from Stanford University. Marcus, with that glowing set of credentials there and that passion that we see from your bio there, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Nigel. I'm happy to be here and thank you for the invitation.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's great to have you on. Do you want to just give us a little bit more background? We've got quite a lot of detail there kind of about your professional life. What about you? Where are you? People might be trying to sit in there and go, right, I'm trying to work out the accent. Where is that from? Tell us a little bit about you and your personal circumstance.
Sure. So I'm originally from Germany. I'm based in Switzerland, though. I mean, it's next door, basically.
Yeah.
But I'm originally from Germany. As you said already, I worked actually for quite a while in project management. I worked in actually large projects. I actually worked also in various continents. I worked in the US, I worked in South America, I worked in various countries in Europe. And that I think that formed also you can say kind of my mindset to be more open for new things, especially in the project management space, which I believe is really required to move things forward.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so and I think a lot of the things that I think we're seeing more now is that recognition of project management being a skill that people need. In fact, I was talking on LinkedIn the other day. It was Joe Paz had put something up about he'd done a half marathon and he'd planned it out as a project, which absolutely done the same myself with training plans. A training plan is a project plan. You start looking at it and all those sort of things, and I heartily believe and say it's a life skill that we should teach at a lower level than we do, waiting until someone's gone through. Well, I suppose we hit universities more often, but quite often people aren't trained this until they've got 10, 15 years into their career, and then they go, oh, you'll be good as a project manager. Let's drag you into that. That's historically, I know that's changing quite a lot now. People are looking to become project managers when they're heading out of university or even before then. But so thinking about all the projects you've been involved with, what is it that you talk about innovation and you talk about improving project management? And I think from talking to you, your focus is around how to innovate the project management professional, right? And think of that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I actually share your view in terms of, or what you said, in terms of more formalizing the project management practice and the skill sets behind that, because I have seen that actually a lot in organizations where people just get pushed into this role of a project manager without having any formal education on project management practices, and anything behind it. They're just basically we're observing other people, and then people say, you just have to put together a project plan and track things. How hard can that be, right? But I think that needs to be taken much more seriously, right? Especially as you mentioned, everything is nowadays a project. And also the other thing is, we know that everything became much more complex and faster moving in organizations and in the world in general. and we have a lot of information to process and a lot of more dependencies. That drives basically the complexity, because I mean, with the digitalization, all these kind of things, there are way more dependencies, right? And that requires a good skill set to manage projects in terms of not only dependencies, but also the attached risks to it, issues, the whole stakeholder management, which is all obviously becoming way more global than it used to be. And this requires a different skill set. It needs to be more formalized, right? And in terms of innovation, I mean, when you look at it in project management, there hasn't been much progress or much innovation at all over the many years. And I have seen that I'm just to give you a little bit more background, how I actually came to the whole topic of innovation and project management. So I entered project management, or became or took on basically a role and that title of a project manager. That was about 15 years ago. And then I became a program manager, and I started working in financial services and banks, and specifically in compliance areas. So I worked in financial crime compliance in large banks here in Switzerland. And who works in such areas would know that these areas are highly data-driven. I mean, which is clear, it's logical, because what their job is basically is to fight crime, financial crime. And the criminals out there, they use the latest technology, everything, right? Whatever is out there. Today, it's artificial intelligence. I mean, obviously, they're also highly data-driven and technology-driven. And so financial services or these compliance areas, they try to keep up with that, right? So they have to ramp up that space and build up their capabilities and become more mature, and obviously ultimately also very driven by data and technology, and also implement artificial intelligence, essentially to improve decision making. That's all what it is in the end, right? Is to make use of data to improve decision making and get more insights, to get more informed in our I mean, in compliance, it is like to judge someone, is that someone I want to, or the bank wants to make business with or not, right? So these are the decisions to be made, and that's what data is being used for. I mean, I'm obviously simplifying that a little bit, but just to give a little bit of context. And then when I saw this, me as a project manager delivering these kind of advanced technologies, and data lakes and data hubs and all these kind of things, right? And I ran data quality programs, rolled out technologies, modern intelligent technologies to such areas. And then I thought myself, we do all this to improve decision making. What about the decision making in projects, right? And project management? Because if you look at the surveys, right, and these project success rates, they're obviously very different types of surveys, but we all know that the success rates are very low. They're definitely not there where they should be, right? I mean, we see some surveys where it's like 30–40% success rates, others even much lower, but definitely it's too low. I mean, 30–40%, give me a break. I mean, that cannot be, right? And that, interestingly, I mean, technology project, at least there, I know these numbers because I've seen these surveys and analyzed them in detail. They haven't changed for the last 20–30 years, not at all. They're always, all the time, every single year, they're around that 30–40% mark. And in IT projects, especially in IT or technology projects, we got agile practices brought in, and there was no real improvement, right? And I always think like agile is definitely good. It's necessary, but it just stopped the downward trend, right? So otherwise we would be rock bottom. So it kind of
was
Sorry.
going to say, would you say with the agile side of it, and that's an interesting point you made there about it stopping us going down rock bottom.
Yeah.
Is agile? Do you think the adoption of agile more wider is really around that a reaction to what you said before, which is the fact that in all industries, the digitalization and the speed of change and the amount of movement and that kind of the spot. I was just looking at the Spotify on my screen there, the Spotify model of releasing lots of things really quickly. That is it's kind of, as you say, if we hadn't adapted to use some of those things, we wouldn't be able to react and deliver the quality of change at pace and at quality. The quantity of change at pace and at quality for the modern world. And kind of, I've never thought of it like that before. And is that where you're thinking, is that we've done that, but actually we've got even the VUCA, the volatility and all those sort of things of the environment is going to get worse. We're not going to start to slow down. It's going to just increase in change.
Oh yeah, I mean, certainly it's increasing. It's not stopping. I mean, if it would stop, then we have a real problem. I think, because many people think like, oh, complexity, VUCA world, and the uncertainty and all this kind of things, right? And it's being mentioned in a way like, oh, this is evil, right? We have to fight it. We have to remove it, right? Remove the complexity, remove the uncertainty. I mean, first of all, you cannot remove uncertainty. Projects are about the future. There's nothing certain about the future. You can just, get closer to certainty, but you will never be certain, right? But I mean, the whole VUCA thing, and complexity especially, when people say like, oh, this is we have so much complexity today, we never had that, right? I actually struggle with these statements, right? Or with such kind of statements, because like, let's say 20 years ago, there was also complexity, but it's all relative, right? It's compared to before, right? And whatever 20 years back 20 years was complex. It was complex compared to, let's say, I don't know, 25 years ago, right? Or 30 years ago, right? So right now we compare to I don't know, like 5 years back or so. Of course, things are more complex. Well, great, because that means we are progressing. We're making progress. We're evolving, right? Technology is moving forward. If there would be if we would be less complex or not more complex than years ago, it would mean that we would just stand still, right? There's no progress at all. So,
we're stagnating, aren't we, there, isn't it?
Exactly, exactly. So I think it's, we should not fall into the trap like saying, oh, it's also complex, and then even I think sometimes it feels to me like this, that we use it as an excuse, right? Or we have all these project failures and the success rates are not really improving. Yeah, of course, because it's also complex nowadays, right? Everything becomes so uncertain. Well, it wasn't different 20 years ago. It's all relative, right? We are improving. But of course, if project management practices are not really evolving with any other progress, like technology evolution, and I mean, we are evolving everywhere, right? We are learning, we are progressing, right? But if these practices in project management are not evolving or keeping the pace, right, with the general evolution, then yes, of course, we are running behind, and everything feels like we are overwhelmed by things, right? And that's coming back to my initial point, right? In these compliance areas that I worked in, I mean, they're really mature. They're really here with their capabilities, using data, using technology way here, and they need to in this case, to fight financial crime, right? But you see, it's actually all possible. There's a lot of money thrown in there to build all this up, right? They're evolving, right? And then, I still have that in my head, right? When these compliance areas or these business areas, then they reach out to project teams or change teams, technology teams, and say, oh, we have a change here. We need to get that done as quick as possible, right? I don't know, like within a month or so. Then we're saying, oh, hold on, right? We don't have that capability, right? We have to follow our process and our whatever we have at our disposal to deliver projects, which is not in line with their capabilities. There's a gap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's a gap between the demand and they're following the evolution. They're actually going with the general evolution, but project management is behind, is running behind. We have that gap. And then, as I said, it's all ringing in my ears still, right? When I hear people saying, yeah, we would like to get that delivered then and then, but a project manager or the change team or the project team, they're not that fast, so we have to wait for them. I heard that somebody saying, and I cannot really disagree with that, because it's true.
Yeah.
We are not as far ahead like other areas, right? And so we hear everywhere, like everything is like transforming digitally. We get data-driven practices rolled out. Everybody says, yeah, data is a new oil, data is an asset, etc. Well, where is it in project management, right? The entire organization gets transformed, except project management. Is that what it is? So there's something wrong, right? And it can be done, right? There's just a problem that many people, they don't believe it yet, because I think there's some fear or some cultural restriction or boundaries that keep people away from this kind of more modern and innovative practices. We have worked in project management forever, based on out of our experience, our skills, right? We get all certified, right? We get all these practices. We know how to estimate tasks, etc., etc. We have all the techniques, right? We have all this, right? And then you get told, if we use data and data analytics and this kind of things, right, then it can prove you're wrong in certain things, right? Well, people don't like that, right? And it feels like, we are outsourcing things. That's, I believe, it feels to many like this. And they cannot really see yet the value of data. But I think there's a lot more behind this. There's more about, it feels like losing power, right? Yeah. Because people go into, and when we do decision making and projects, everybody comes with a mission in there and some self-interest, right? Everybody goes in there. One wants to get promoted, right? I don't want to have any funny stories about my project here. I want to basically show up as a superhero. The other person has some other political motivations, everyone comes on with a different interest, right? And then if you put data at the table, or the insights that you can derive from data, then it's a different game out of the sudden, right? And I believe there's a lot of fear around this. And that's basically what I'm working on, right? To get to the bottom of it and understand what is the motivation that people are actually afraid of this, or are just going like halfway, basically using data just to confirm their own ideas, right? Which is not usually
confirmation bias, isn't it?
Exactly. That's what it is. And so these are the things that there's probably still will take a while, right, to actually get that on, because, as I said, it's much more than just putting some data technology in place and running some data through and then get some insights. There's much more behind this. It starts with culture. It starts with some mindset, people's behavior. Then we have the more old-fashioned people who reject data altogether. They don't want to hear data. Then we have on the other side, we have the younger generation who are all analytics driven. They say data is a single source of truth or something like this, which is also wrong in my view. It doesn't exist really like this or it's misleading at least.
Well, you can interpret it differently, can't you? It's whilst you can, maybe we'll get into this in a minute, but you get some of the tools and techniques that can produce some insights and present a number of flags. And you were talking about the compliance industry and the way that would do. What they do, they'll pull out a load of potential issues, and then you layer human intelligence on top of those to go, actually, what is driving that? Actually, is there a correlation here? And is it correlation, or is it causality, or is it correlation? And the same thing with project insights, isn't it? If you sit there and go, right, okay, because we use this technology, we're always late. Okay, great. Is that because of the technology, or is it because our skill sets aren't right? And we need to change it. It's not the technology, because you could make the decision, well, we won't use that technology, and that might not be right. It might be the right technology for the job, but you're putting the wrong people on the tooling. And it become, and I know I've spoken to a couple of people on using AI, and to me, interpretation of data a lot of the time it's AI. It's just how developed it is. It's, do you know what I mean? It's putting a set of rules in to interpret some data and give you a question or an answer out of it. I use AI all the time on the data that I get from my emails to decide whether to read them or not. That's AI, but it's also data, isn't it? They're very much, I think they're very much hand in glove on that. And it's just the scale of the data you're using and application of it. And it makes me wonder on project management, on that data and these data that we use, where we get it from. Because I see over my career now in project management, I've seen buckets of data in odd places. Microsoft Outlook, massive amounts in there. Project plans in PowerPoint. Excel spreadsheets with project plans and risk logs in there. A portfolio and program management systems that have data in there that's copied from another system and hand keyed in, but doesn't necessarily connect. So you couldn't join one bit. These and I guess some of the fuzzy magic that you can do with some of the data these days can help with that sort of stuff. Is how do you see us taking that project data? Now, I imagine in the finances side, there's probably quite a lot of data that's quite accurate and quite available, but that isn't enough, is it? There's the rest of it that is, how do we get that data in a place that we can reuse it? That's question number. I think that's my biggest question, actually, because once you've got it, the getting it out, there's tools that are magical that can do that, but getting it in there, getting it in a place that we can use. Well, how do you see us changing? That is
a very good question. And of course, there will be some standardization will be required of some sort, right? But beforehand, it's something else. It comes back to the people behavior, right? Because as you said, right, the data or project data like schedules and risk logs and all this kind of things, it's flying around everywhere, right? And I mean, think about this, and I'm guilty myself, right? When I ran projects, so I'm, for example, I have a Microsoft project plan, right? Which I used to have really detailed. I enjoyed doing that, and to the real nitty-gritty stuff, right? But then, once you actually on your finish line, right, and actually deliver that project, and you have a go live, right? Then you're all of a sudden you're facing different problems, and your project schedule is kind of, you lose the focus in terms of maintenance, and you just dump it somewhere on some SharePoint, which for me, it always feels like a shredder because it's going nowhere. It's
it's a dusty shelf at best, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I get, as it's just you and me talking, can we just get a little confession out of you here? And I'll confess as well, is that the other thing is there's 2 copies of that project plan quite often. There's the declared project plan, and then there's the other one that's on your C drive that you think is really going to happen at times.
And this is precisely the point, what I think before we talk about any data standardization and this kind of things, there's a different aspect. The first thing is really like to make sure that you actually store your data and maintain your data, that it's actually appropriate. And that, I have project schedules that I just dumped there, and I haven't really maintained them that diligently. That you can say this is a complete picture of the truth. And then on top of it, of course, you will not disclose a lot of things, right? You have your as you said, your C drive copy, right? Because as usual, right, or as often it happens in projects, right? There are some workarounds need to be applied. There might not really that according to organizational policies. No, you don't want people to know that.
Well, and you might also get stoned for the word contingency in a project plan.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's exactly. And I've seen that happen before now, where people are going, well, you can't put contingency in, and I'm like, if someone comes to me with a project plan without contingency in, that's not I don't believe it. It's a happy path plan. But and other organizations I've been in, they've kind of said, well, you can't say contingency. You can't say there's a contingency in there. And so actually, so you go, all right, so this is the real work of it. And then you've got your own plan where you think it's 10 days dev and you've got 5 days duration contingency because you're not sure on whether it's going to be there. So you end up declaring the one that is acceptable, but the real one where you've got that little bit of bunts in your pocket. And it's about expectation management. It's about protecting yourself, it goes to something else I saw the other day, which I loved it really, was the fact that someone said about red projects need help. Green projects need to be looked at and do more reporting, because more than likely the green projects have got someone to hide, and the red projects actually need help. They don't need extra reporting. They don't need extra information. They need someone to go in and help them solve a problem. And it's the same sort of thing sometimes, is that you kind of, if you declare that you've got that little bit of contingency and someone turns around to you and says, well, actually, we can do that quicker then. No. This is my best estimate of what I think it'll be. Well, we take out the contingency. What's the date without the contingency? And suddenly, we'll go for that then. As soon as you declare that early date, that's the date. I had a big argument once with someone around the fact. They said, right, I think it was 2 weeks difference. They said, you need to know that you can make the date. And I said, well, I can make that date. And I declared the contingency. And they said, but without the contingency, we can make that date. And I said, no, you want me to commit to a date. I can commit to that date, and I'll get my team to do it. And we will try to do it earlier, but I'm not committing to anything earlier, because I wasn't confident that everything that could go well would go well. And I was confident that the other one, which didn't have the most doomsayer position, but had enough in there for me to be able to say, yeah, I'm confident on that. And we have to, I think the culture side of it you're talking about there, we have to come from sponsorship and from stakeholder level and owner level and customer level to say what those cultural norms are, so that you can get that clear data position. And actually, as an organization, if you were able to go, right, there's Nigel's plan that said this is the happy path, there's Nigel's plan with this contingency, right? Oh, how often do we need to use the contingency when we are running risk management in this way? Oh, we're using less contingency. Oh, when we don't run it this way, we're using more contingency. Could be a correlation, could be a causality, but it gives you more data points. But at the moment, some of that data point is hidden, isn't it? Like say on the C drive.
Yes, exactly. That's one thing, and that is difficult then to really I mean, to use data if it's just half the truth, right? And you don't have a real proper picture of the reality, right? But I mean, again, this is a cultural issue, I think, that needs some more fundamental shift of a mindset, you know, to release the fears that people have, right? And they're not speaking up openly on issues. Or the other thing is, right, you know, we want to collect data on projects, on past projects. We want to have basically a list of projects that we can analyze and find patterns to get better in the future, right? So then tell a project manager, okay, you're sharing your projects right now, or your project data, right? Then let's say even if, you know, you would actually put in all your little hidden secrets in there, right? Nobody wants to share their failures, right? I mean, we're sharing success stories, right? Of course, like, you know, I was in organizations where they ran these, what they call the brown bag sessions, right? Where you actually explain all your, oh, how have we done that? How have we achieved that success story, right? And you tell them all about them, and the entire organization is listening to you of what you have achieved, right? But then we need the same thing for failures. No, how did we run this project against the wall? I mean, what happened there, right? Please tell us. We want to know, because this is where the insights are coming from. If we just talk about success stories, we will not improve. It's not going to work, right? We need a full picture. But then there's this problem that people will not, or they will be at least reluctant to share failures, right? Nobody wants to share failures.
Or sometimes with those failures, the people who have the knowledge of what was going on aren't there anymore because they've been asked to take a walk. Whereas actually that and sometimes the person who's been asked to take a walk isn't the cause of the failure. There'll be someone else within the hierarchy somewhere that's decided that they're the wrong person who's the failure. And but the thing is, it's not a witch hunt for what we're talking about here. But then people get worried about it being that witch hunt and about trying to pin blame on someone. And I think it's a real massive conundrum for me on how we get to this point. I talked to Ricardo Vargas some time back, and he was looking at being able to get a cross-organizational, cross-industry data together in one big bucket for us to be able to get this kind of data about projects and do it. And I know that the major projects association down in the UK, Jonathan and Andrew are, I'm sure it's Andrew, my brain's going, those guys are kind of looking at similar sort of things of how you get that big massive change and how they can, and we get these big, quite often either large IT or large civil projects that we all know run, or multi-discipline projects that run for years and then get extended and then get extended, and there's always that kind of a nod of the head from a point of view of a spectator of going, well, it's a big thing, it's going to be complicated, as you talked about, but hang on, why is it tripled in price? What's the project manager done wrong? And I'm kind of straight away there going, I doubt it's the project manager that tripled it in price. But it is how you get people to openly share the data about those failures, in quotes, and why they ended up being 3 times the price. What did they do wrong at the beginning? With other industries where it could be commercially sensitive, or it may be politically sensitive, and on all these different things. And I find it would be, because the problem is it's the echo chamber problem you get, don't you, with your own organization, depending on the scale and the size of the organization. If you're only doing your own change, you only know what you're bad at, so you can only get as good as your, you know what I mean, the things that you can spot. If you're taking industry knowledge and industry data, you could have things that you flag up and go, actually, you're running that project this way, you're doing that on that project. Industry's best practice, common practice says this, stop, do something different. And it's how we get that industry, because it's even in organizations that are doing lots and lots of change, hundreds and hundreds of projects, there's still an echo chamber effect, isn't there? Spotify only know what Spotify do, for example.
Yeah, no, I see your point. But I think it's more than just looking at industry data. I mean, obviously, it would be great, right, to have more holistic view, right? And so, for example, if I run projects in my compliance areas, and then I mean a particular type of project, and then I see in the industry data tells me actually, or I get some insights that these kind of projects I could run much faster because of this and that, right? Then that would be great insight, at least to push me or to help me to explore certain things, right? Not necessarily to change everything upside down, but to really question myself, okay, what's happening here, right? But there's another thing, another aspect, and I always come back to the areas that I worked in compliance. I worked also with like legal areas in these organizations. So I worked with lawyers, and then you give out a date, like a delivery date or go live date, whatever, or delivery date. And they take it as written in stone. It's like you don't deliver by then, right? You deliver a day too late. You're toast. I mean, you have a serious problem, right? And this is a mindset that is a problem, because we're talking about the future. So what are project managers doing then? And they put some massive contingency, coming back to your contingency topic again, right? They put massive contingency on top of it. And sometimes they're crazy large. I mean, I have seen some contingencies, some buffers there on top of it. You don't understand how these actually get calculated. So people act out of experience, but when you know that your stakeholders will just crucify you if you're not delivering by that date, then you will just add another month maybe, right? Just on top of it, right? And then, and this is where this whole thing goes off track in terms of project success rates and these kind of things, right? Because if you really analyze your past projects, right? So there are some from Oxford University, for example, they do a lot of research on this, and they have actual data, and they see then, because we are all very optimistic usually, they see there's a huge gap, right? Meaning that we are estimating project completely wrong, and we continuously do so. Even if we have 20 years of experience, we continue estimating the projects incorrectly. We keep doing that, and then we can use insights from past projects to actually correct that. But again, right, we're driven by our all environments and organizations. So if we have some stakeholders which are all lawyers and they don't understand project management at all, and say, oh, you deliver by that date, that's the date, right? If not, you're being fired or anything like this, then this is people will just act out of fear, right? And put a lot of contingency on top of it, right? And I mean, I could go on and on, because the whole culture behind this, right? In especially large organizations, where you run these performance reviews, and you get basically judged on this, or PMOs with their metrics, right? Which use, oh, you haven't met this milestone, right? And then they punish you, and you get basically you run around from meeting to meeting to justify why is your project amber or red, right? And you feel like you're on some you're being processed.
Well, actually what you need is someone to come to you and assist you in like you may put together a plan on how to bring it back, but actually,
Yes.
as an organization in those scenarios, we should be turning around and going, that guy needs help, that girl needs help, that project
Yes.
needs some more support, resources. What do we do about that? Rather than, here's some more work, give us some more reports, tell us why, send us to more meetings. We twist that the wrong way. It's about, again, it becomes that, and then it becomes fear, and then people stop going red and early enough or amber early enough and asking for help early enough, and then the project fails because they've asked for the help too late, and then you bring in a red squad that sort of parachute in and save everyone. Whereas actually, if the culture of the organization was early enough that going, this is all over the place early on, less people, less expensive people are able to be put in at the beginning to give that support and keep it on track. And
Yes.
and I think that the thing, again, when you say you look back at your past projects and we use those to estimate things, and there's a couple of things I picked up there. It's funny, my friend just ran the Snowdon Marathon this weekend, which is a 26.2, and it goes up and down Snowdon, the highest mountain in England and Wales, compared to Switzerland and Germany. I know we're tiddlers, but there you go. But he ran up there and he ran back, and it's kind of, we're sitting there with him chatting away after. He said, would you do another one? No, never again. And actually, and he'd said that, he said, this will be my first and last. And actually 5 minutes into our conversation, we were chatting, the road one would be easier though, wouldn't it? He said, yeah, I was thinking that the road one might be easier. And so this is within 10 minutes of the pain and the suffering and the hardship that he's gone through that run. He's starting to think, yeah, actually, I've forgot about it. They're forgetting. Apparently the human brain's really good at getting rid of things like that. And I think it applies to projects as well. And you think, right, well, we estimate that. Well, that went wrong. Yeah, but it won't happen this time. And we had this, but yeah, but we know now, so we won't make that same mistake again. And as you say, those rose-tinted spectacles go on, and you think, yeah, that feels more reasonable now. And our experience actually is probably, whilst experienced is good, it can also be biased. And
Yes.
and that's kind of just made me think of that, the fact that we will own the data that we're looking at historically also doesn't, like, you take into account your estimates as an estimate point of view, and we take it that, right, great, this is the estimate, whether it be time, whether it be money, and we've gone over or we've gone late. Okay, so that's what we've done, so this is there, we'll adjust for that, etc. But what it doesn't necessarily is the time, cost, quality, scope triangle thing of, if you're only measuring one of those and only using the data from one of those, well, we delivered it late, but we had 20 times as much of the scope or loads more quality in there. You get those other measures that can drive the other part of that triangle or cube or whatever you want to call it. And again, how do you solve those interdependencies? Is it just more data and more being able to plug more data together and having more connotations?
Yeah, I mean, that where you basically want the detail of data analytics, right? You find like a particular type of project, but I mean, I could say, for example, I have a data migration project. If I just look at data migration project in general, well, you find like millions of different sorts of migration project, right? So you have to build your criteria there to narrow that down, right? And I mentioned Oxford University before. I mean, I think it's called reference class forecasting, which is based on Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, his series about biases, etc. And they basically have to build up some what they call a reference class or certain criteria to narrow that down, right? I mean, of course, we always say like every project is unique, or at least the output is unique, right? But there are tons of elements in a project that are just copied over, right? They're all the same, right? I mean, it's just like building a house, right? I mean, there's a process. Every house is different. It's a unique product. But there are a lot of processes in there. It's just the same. It's just copied all over the place, right? So that's where you can actually get insights from and use those insights to get better in the future with your estimates, because we are not made for estimating. We are not designed for forecasting projects. It's even ridiculous that we run projects, or we call ourselves project managers, because we are completely handicapped by nature, right? We don't have that capability. As you said before, we have like confirmation bias, we have optimism bias. A whole series of biases, right? And it all kicks in.
Yeah, because we're designed as creatures on the savannah and that to do pattern recognition, and we do pattern recognition, to identify things that might harm us. Yeah. And so our inner chimp is sitting there going, right, hang on, that right, I'm worried about that, or oh, I'm not worried about that. And if there's not enough of them, we're not going to worry about it. And we do it with our vision, we do it with a lot of things, don't we? And that it's all, and again, it's pattern recognition, but it's with a very specific focus, isn't it? Whereas if we were able to do pattern recognition like some of the supercomputers we've got sat in the Antarctic, then we might be able to be a bit better. But we're not good enough to do that much, to use that much data, are we?
Yeah, but as I said, right, we have to narrow that down. For example, if I have a software development project, I wouldn't go out there and say, let's look for such a type of software development project, because you will not find it, at least not the exact same project, because we have different people, we have a different product to develop, etc. Right? But if I have a particular task in a software development project, right, then I can actually go back in past project and find patterns. How have people actually addressed that particular task, which is all repetitive, right? And then you bring in all these different parameters of skill sets, people's behavior or location even, or mindset, culture, whatever, right? There are a lot of aspects that you can bring in, right? To kind of get an idea what a reasonable estimate is. Because I don't know about you, but I was in software development or I ran software development projects. And although I have a software development background, I work with developers who, let's say, they work with Java. I don't know Java. So I tell them, you have that task, give me an estimate. They could have told me anything, right? They tell me, oh, it takes 2 weeks, let's say, right? Yeah, of course, I'm going to challenge them, because that's what we do, right? We challenge them just to bring down the estimate, right? But if that guy says, no, it's 2 weeks, I cannot reduce it, well, then we have to take it. And maybe, and probably, that person is just requiring 1 week, right? He's just putting himself like a little bit of buffer there. We cannot really you control that or check that, right? No, but if you have data, then it's not to say, or these insights from data, it's not to say, oh, but wait a second, right? You gave me 2 weeks. I have here 1 week, right? So you're telling me something wrong here, right? That's also not the way to go, right? But it's something to argue, right? To push, right? To say, in the past we have done it this way. What have those people done differently? And then you have actually something real to challenge an estimate, instead of just by the sake of challenging an estimate, right? So you have something more that you can work with and push people to better performance or higher performance. I just think about this, like, when agile practices came in and Scrum and these kind of things, right? That was also set up in a way that actually people become more, they're competing with each other, right? And that they become eventually faster because they have something to compare to, right? And they compare to actually other people's performance in terms of story points or anything like this, right? Yeah. And when we estimate, then you have something to compare to. It's a similar concept, kind of.
Yeah, because as you say, it's kind of, you're sitting there, you talk to someone and say, well, what sort of story point, how complex do you think it is? Because you're talking story points, because you're talking something conceptual in their sort of estimation of complexity and difficulty, that takes away from days and things, and actually is more likely for someone to get a more honest opinion from them than if you said how many days. Both over and underestimating, I think, is probably, because you will get to, well, how complex is it, and how much work or rework and things like that. And unless you spend a lot of time delving down into detailed estimates with an individual, that I do like I've used a little bit the agile poker, the scrum poker cards, and I think it's a really good way of doing it when you've got a group of people who understand what they're doing in the technology, and you get that, and you get the one puts 10 days, the other put 150 days. That's brilliant, because those are the ones where you sit there going, hang on, we've got some confusion or misunderstanding about what this thing is. This use case is not clear. And then you have that conversation, and as soon as you have that conversation, it opens up a load of things and either draws them together or moves them one way or the other. And whereas if you said, how long do you think that'll take? You wouldn't get that. You wouldn't have two people saying, how long do you, if you said to two developers, how long do you think you can take it? And how long do you think it would take you? They start going, well, it's a bit of ego thing in there, doesn't it? A bit of whether I'm better than them. Whereas this is, well, how horrible is it? Regardless of how quickly, doesn't matter. There's none of that performance sort of bit of it. It's just about their view, and I think it does that. It takes it away, doesn't it? And those estimating things, it is, you say, it is a minefield of what we can get right, get wrong. If someone, the gold standard issues that you get when you ask someone to do something, and the level of standard that you need that is required for this particular piece of work may be at this level, but the person you've asked to estimate it is up here, we're giving you a platinum piece of work. You don't need that platinum piece of work. You might be doing a proof of concept that you're just throwing out there, and you may have not communicated that very well to that person. And it's a proof of concept, and those are where you can get those differences, isn't it? If you knock something together, it look all right, it's only for internal, no one's going to see it, then they would have a different approach potentially, or they might not, and they're still trying to do the gold standard because all their work is always at a gold standard. And it's kind of, it's one of those things, you open that box and there's everything coming out of it, isn't it, of these things, of all these different quality standards, of the estimating standards, of those individual cultures, the fear thing of, if you've got developers who every time they get it wrong, they get hammered and told they got to work the weekend to get it right and finished. Well, they're going to say 2 weeks rather than a week because they don't want to work the weekend. They don't want to be pushed into working the weekends if they've got a little bit of relax in there. But then you're not delivering stuff as cost effectively as you could do, because time expands to fill the time available. So if someone's got 2 weeks to do it in, they'll do it in 2 weeks. It's not that often. Maybe in some of the agile processes it's different, but it's that thing, isn't it? If you've got 2 weeks to do it in, you'll probably do it in 2 weeks. You'll just do it well, you do extra, you'll maybe take a little bit more consideration on certain elements of it that you wouldn't necessarily do if you were trying to do it a bit quicker. I wouldn't say they're necessarily having a coffee and not doing anything, but you know what I mean, that's unusual. It's more that slightly changed to the emphasis and the speed that you could do something.
But you touched a good point there, because and it is a minefield, right? In terms of estimation, when a developer says, I need 2 weeks, and you give that person 2 weeks, then there's a high chance actually it takes more than 2 weeks. Effectively, although the whole task can be done in 1 week, maybe, but you give that developer 2 weeks, probably will run at the edge, right? Or maybe gets even delayed, right? Because the more time you use it, right? You always do that. That's this other thing that, by nature, we are just like this, right? It's like, let's put some more time in, we are more relaxed, but in the end, it becomes a stretch again, right? And that's where project managers come in, and they challenge people and push it down, right? I do that myself, right? Or did that myself with, for example, external vendors, like software vendors, right? I gave them some huge story about, oh my God, we have to get this done, otherwise now this would be a complete nightmare, and we have absolutely no contingency whatsoever, and that software, you need to get that delivered by, I don't know, Monday or so, right? Although I have maybe like 2 weeks later, not a problem. But I know if I would give them 2 weeks, they would delay it, or there would be some problems coming up, whatever, right? I mean, that's how we usually operate, right? You bake something in, and everybody bakes in some estimates, and all of a sudden you have some massive amount of estimates, right? Sorry, contingency.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, you don't, with your suppliers, you don't know what constraints they've got. You don't know, you can't control those constraints. You can't sit there and go, right, I'll go to my VP to get that person reallocated to that piece of work to make sure it happens, because it's a supplier, and that supplier won't necessarily have that. So if you come to that end of those 2 weeks that you didn't give them and didn't push them for, you're right, that then you're immediately hitting your timescales, aren't you, your milestones. And it's the whole planning thing, and timelines on projects is a whole, it's an art, it's a set of made up stuff. It's a whole, it's just wild. It's a hell of a skill at times, because you've got, as a project manager, you're not sitting there trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. You're not trying to pretend it's going to take longer. You're trying to sail it down the middle, aren't you? And kind of get on what you think is actually going to happen. And so some stuff you'll take a risk, on other stuff you won't. And then you've got a balance. And then, as you say, when you get those contingency or project compression, that's when it starts to become a problem. And that's where some of the failures may be. It's a case of us not. But then you've got to be careful, because there are people who just go, yeah, as you say, it's going to take 12 months. But it's actually a 9-month piece of work, and it takes 12 months. And therefore, we're not driving productivity. We're not driving cost saving. We're not getting cost benefits so quickly. And that's where I think the agile agenda and that delivering of, I think it's more of a problem when we've got the kind of traditional waterfall projects that end up with the benefits right at the end. If we can do that by doing the agile type of approaches and dropping the benefits early, dropping them quickly, getting the payback, rather than having the one big bang. And sometimes I know with some projects that's not viable. That takes away that problem, because you can go, right, we're planning this. As long as everyone accepts that you're going to deliver everything by this date, and it'll be a mixed bag of what comes through. And sometimes we'll plan something one sprint, but actually we don't get it. It'll be the next sprint, but something else has come in earlier. And that's the culture change on those sort of things, because I think it's so important on that as well, because you've got that big bang thing at the end, 12 months down the line. The way the world changes these days, you could have delivered a third of that by 3 months in, and you're getting benefits out of it. But the decision, and you'll continue to get benefits, but your decision may be, let's reprioritize that work. Let's take that funding we got for the rest of the year, we put it to this thing because that's more important. If you've done it without releasing anything out, you've got 0 and 3 months of sunk cost gone. Never getting anything from that ever again until you start the project again. And actually, you might as well throw that all away. Whereas if you've released stuff, you're getting that benefit. And the fact that you've had to reprioritize the rest, that doesn't change. Well, that means you overall the organization gets more. And I think that's one of the big benefits of moving to these kind of approach. But you've got to move to that point where it's no point being agile without getting business benefits during it, in my view. It doesn't feel, because then it's just waterfall with a load of agile tools. It's kind of, but yeah, if you accept that's what it is, that's okay. But if you think you're agile, you're not. You've got to be releasing stuff. You've got to be delivering business benefit throughout the project. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to me. But yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt agile is definitely removing a lot of the risk that's out there, especially with what you're saying, right? Everything is faster moving nowadays, right? And I don't question agile practices, right? I'm actually quite a fan of agile practices. I just think we need something on top of it, because you can be agile, which improves obviously your flexibility and to react to certain developments, but then that's the precise point, right? You have to react to certain things, certain changes. How would you see them, right? These kind of changes in the business environments, etc. Anything, let's take an example, right? The pandemic, right? How that happened, right? I mean, when everybody had to work from home from one day to another, right? So organizations, and I was working in one organization, they were prepared, right? They were prepared to send home 60, 70,000 people, and there was some struggle in the first week, and then everything went basically to normal operations from an infrastructure point of view, right? And it was all going smooth. Other organizations, they weren't that lucky. They just went down and they were completely, they couldn't operate anymore, right? Because they were not prepared. They haven't seen that coming. And so what I'm saying is, in projects, and there will be many more disruptions or disruptive events they are still to come, right? I think we need to be prepared to react, or not only to be flexible enough, so agile enough to react to disruptive events, but we need to be informed about them actually, to actually get prepared properly, right? Otherwise, you can be as agile as you want, right? Then it's useless if you don't have that anticipative view on certain events to come, right? And that's where you need data, basically. And just to give you a small example, where data would have been useful, or data analytics, or even AI and these kind of things, right? I was working with an external vendor, so a supplier to the project, and they were delivering software on a frequent basis. And they had some issues in their own organization with some malware. They had some malware attack, right? So they were infected with the virus, and they continued delivering software, right? Without telling us that they had a problem, right? And we discovered only via social media. Only. In many organizations, social media is restricted and you cannot even access it. So you don't even look at this. And when you go home, right, and you're not in the office anymore, then you don't think about work anymore. You don't care about this really, right? And you don't do any research on this, right? So the point is, right, if we would have some, and I compare it again to compliance errors, right? When you open a bank account, they do some complete scanning of your background, right? Know your customer, KYC, right? So you need to do a KYP, know your project. That's what I call it. Because you have to have a complete scan of your environments and everything that's involved with your suppliers, your stakeholders, your business environments, anything, right? And it goes beyond the normal risk management practices. It's much more, because you use basically a much wider view by employing data instead of having this what's that called? Somebody labeled that risk myopia, right? Where you kind of short-sighted. You have only this view that you have, right?
Just the things you can influence that you worry about, rather than the things you don't worry about.
But you mentioned it, everything is moving fast nowadays. We're obviously in an age of information overflow. So we cannot process everything by ourselves, right? We need some help.
Absolutely.
And that's why, to start with, data analytics would come in handy, right? Eventually, obviously, AI and these kind of things, right? But I mean, you have to get started somehow with data, because otherwise there will be more failures to come, I think, in projects.
Yeah. Well, I know it's getting late over where you are, and I think we could sit here and talk about this all night and put the world to right. I think
probably
it's
true.
such a deep and multifaceted topic, and I'm sure that people will want to hear more about it and maybe get in touch. So if people wanted to talk to you more, see more about this, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, so I'm easy to find. I have a relatively unique last name on LinkedIn, so I'm easy to find there. Otherwise, I have my website, markusglowasz.com. For anyone who is interested, can visit that as well. But I guess the easiest way is via LinkedIn.
Brilliant, superb. Well, thank you very much, Markus. It's been a fascinating conversation, and there's things pinging around in my head and thoughts on there, and again, it's as every one of these it makes me think about how I've done things differently and could have done things differently. So I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for coming on the show and being so generous with your time, and have a fantastic rest of your evening.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me today.
No problem.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.